Hello you, it's me. Today we're going to talk about the very cool urban fantasy modern day vampire thriller, Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I've got Mexican Gothic on my TBR. This is my first foray into Sylvia Moreno-Garcia, but I had a great time and I think it's a great place to start. If you read this one or you read anything else by the author, let me know what you thought in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think I should read next. I'm going to be doing plot review, things I liked, things I didn't like. As usual, it'll all be on the time bar. Feel free to click around. This novel is set in an alternate Mexico City in a world where the existence of vampires has been revealed to the masses. Happened a while ago, back in the 70s. Families and clans of vampires have revealed themselves to either be embedded already in high society or have seized control of huge territories. The wars that were now waged between vampire clans underground are now waged out in the open. Human beings are used for food or caught in the crossfire, where cities and areas do not take active measures to keep vampires out. Mexico City is one such area. Every entrance in its exterior wall is guarded. The streets are heavily policed by the militias of drug cartels to ensure a vampire-free zone. Domingo, the main character we follow, is a kid, forced to scratch a living on Mexico City streets by collecting garbage, doing favors for petty low-level criminals, and he makes the choice to help Atl, an Aztec-descended vampire hiding in the city from a powerful clan of necros, European vampires, with toxic blood and saliva that they can use to enslave and control human thralls. He is sucked into a vampire war and Mexico's criminal underworld and forced to confront again and again that the woman he is slowly falling for is a dangerous killer. We also follow a police officer called Aguirre, who is working to track down a human drug cartel known as Deep Crimson, who are doing a better job with their militia of keeping the streets clean than the police are. This book was originally published in 2016, either by a small publishing house or self-published, but was printed again by mainstream publishers last year after the success of Mexican Gothic. Vampire horror fiction is one of the genres I am always most hesitant to read. They are done to death, and there are so many people who are die-hard advocates of traditional vampire lore. I find it very hard to be invested in a story with vampires in. Vampires are not scary, and it's very hard in an era that we live in now that isn't super religious to make them horrifying. Most vampire books are also very samey, and I think it's in part due to the fact that you rarely see them outside of a story or a storyline that is romance-centric. They have been sexualized to death, and while originally that was something that led to them being alluring, strange, dangerous, because luring people in with sex was a sinful thing, looked down upon by the ultra-religious. I think it's now something that has led to their slow degradation. We do not live in the 1700s anymore. That was a bit of a rant, but if you want me to be invested in a vampire story writing, it's got to be new and it's got to be fresh. This is pretty fresh, and the die-hard vampire fans are going to cry about it. Vampire lore, for the most part, is boring because we've been overexposed, and one of the best choices that the author made in this book is bringing in more than traditional Western vampire lore that we're used to. You have the necros, yes, which are pretty close to traditional Western European vampires. The Tlahuipochtli, sorry if I butchered that, Aztec-descended vampires who can turn into hummingbirds and who drink blood through a proboscis. Revenants that can drink human and vampire blood are incredibly tall, twisted by scoliosis over hundreds of years into hairless, bunched, long-fingered nightmare monstrosities, very reminiscent of Nosferatu's Count Orlok, and I thought that one was especially a very nice touch. There's a very cool glossary in the back that tells you more about vampires from different cultures, many of whom we don't actually get to see in this book. Yes, the author has taken some liberties with some things, like saying North American vampires are Wendigos. They're something different. But the variety that the author has put in the glossary makes me think that eventually maybe this is a world that's going to be revisited, and maybe there's setup happening for a sequel. The ending of this one is open enough that the author could definitely come back to it and develop it into a prologue to a bigger story if they wanted to. And I think we've only seen a very small sliver of the world in Sylvia Moreno-Garcia's head. I think there's subtext in this book that could be criticism of a few different things. I wonder if the European vampires coming over and waging war against the natives is a very heavy-handed colonialism metaphor. You also have different opinions within Mexico City about who the power should go to. I think maybe it's sort of New World versus Old World values. There was some stuff I wasn't sure about. While I long to see vampires in a not romance-heavy context, this is, I feel, a centrally romance book. Domingo is obsessed with Atle, the vampire he is assisting, and since these vampires are literally evolved to lure prey in through attractiveness, through seductiveness, I was never sure whether it was genuine attraction because she's a vampire and because that's what she does, or because she represents a very different aspect of society than the one Domingo is from, to the extent where in his eyes she's almost idolized because of her position. And I don't think it ever really clarifies which one it is. I think that's a question you get a lot in vampire romance. How real is this, and how do we know? It's an interesting question to answer, and a lot of people don't go into it very deeply. In the beginning, as with most vampire romances, it is one of convenience, of resources, of predator and prey. Can a relationship that comes out of something so unhealthy ever be healthy in the end without acknowledging how wrong it was before? Also in this book, vampire familiars are called Renfields, which is clearly a Dracula nod. I'd be okay with that if I hadn't seen a bunch of other books use the same term for it. I feel like just one person could get away with it, but because a lot of people are using it, I think it's becoming sort of pseudo-official terminology now for a vampire thrall. I really like in books where you have a villain that has some redeemable qualities or a way you can empathize or sympathize with them about their backstory, about why they're doing what they're doing, that makes you question whether they really are irredeemably bad, whether they took a wrong path at some point in their life, why they've turned into the person they are. That kind of thing is really interesting to me. And having point of view chapters from the villain's perspective gives you such an excellent opportunity to explore this. In here, though, we have villain point of view chapters, and they just all so 100% suck. There's nothing about the villains that is even a crumb not evil. So that felt a bit heavy-handed to me. I think all the characters were painted well, painted convincingly, but I think I would have liked a bit more depth to the villains than these guys are the bad guys, which is something I hope gets explored because we only see sort of the son of the big bad guy on the throne in this book. It's always very cool reading things that are set in my home city or my hometown. When I read things written about London by people who have very obviously never spent a lot of time in London, it shows. So I wonder if you have spent a lot of time in Mexico City, if you live in Mexico City, how representative of that city is the vibe of this book? How well does it capture what the city is? I'd give this 5 stars for originality and world build, but 3 stars for character development and plot. So it kind of averages out to 4 overall. I think now that we have the info dump out of the way, if the author were to come back to this, we could really get into a proper story. And I feel like there's a hell of a lot of potential here for a really good world build. So thanks for watching my review. If you've read this, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. In the description, I'll link my Goodreads and Twitter and my Instagram. If you like sci-fi and you want to join our sci-fi book club, that'll be linked in the description as well. And I'll see you soon for the next review. Bye.